the plane crashed. The world went silent. Two strangers woke up on an island with no name. They searched for rescue and found a new life. When the helicopter came, they were no longer two. The plane broke apart before anyone could understand what was happening. A dry snap. The engines scream, the sound of wings shattering amid the thunder. For an instant, sky and sea were the same thing, an abyss of foam and metal. She remembers the seatbelt coming loose, the water rising over her body, the salt taste mixed with fear. He remembers her hand thrashing at the surface, the lightning's reflection lighting the face he would never forget. After that, only silence. The kind of silence that comes after the world ends. When the sun rose, debris was everywhere. Open suitcases, pieces of fuselage, the echo of a tragedy. And among it all, the two of them, soaked, wounded, but alive. The island where they woke felt like an old dream. No sign of civilization, no sound besides the whisper of leaves and the sea breaking on the rocks. The air smelled of salt and beginnings. But beginnings sometimes hurt more than endings. She cried in silence, not knowing if from fear or relief. He stood, staring at the horizon like a man doing a math that wouldn't add up. He promised he'd get them out. She didn't believe him, but she kept the promise anyway, because there it was the only thing that still made sense. In the first days, the body moved by instinct. Find shelter, water, food, surviving, nothing else. They found a small waterfall hidden in the island's interior. Water fell clear over black stones and moss, the steady sound like a slow beating heart. There he built the first shelter, using branches and parts of the fuselage. He was practical, methodical, as if he were still in an invisible office, giving orders to the wind. She, more human, more sensitive, watched the sky, the tides, the signs. And when he went quiet for too long, she remembered that being alive also hurts. The nights came cold, even in paradise. The fire took too long to catch. Stomachs ached for lack of food, and fear came in waves as strong as the sea. He slept little, always alert. She pretended to sleep, listening to his breathing and trying to believe they weren't alone. One day, she found him sitting by the beach, looking at the horizon. She asked if he still thought they could be rescued. He answered only, as long as the sea keeps bringing something back, there's still a chance. It was the first time she heard tenderness in his voice, and the first time she truly saw him tired. As the days passed, the distance between them became routine. They worked together, ate together, but rarely looked each other in the eyes. And even so, something was growing there, something that didn't ask permission. Storm season arrived without warning. Wind roared through the brush, tearing leaves, turning the ground to mud. The makeshift shelter trembled with every thunderclap, and rain invaded through every seam. During one of those nights, the fire went out. She tried to relight it, but the wind wouldn't allow it. Soaked, shaking, she collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Tears mixed with rainwater, and the sound of her crying got lost among the lightning. He watched her for a while. Then he came closer, without a word. He just wrapped her in the wet blanket and pulled her near. The heat of bodies was more effective than any fire. She didn't resist. She rested her head on his shoulder and stayed there, listening to his heart keep time with the storm. For the first time since the crash, she did not feel alone. Time passed without being measured. When the wind died, they were still there, embraced. There were no plans, no promises, only a good silence that asked for no explanations. Little by little, the following nights grew less cold. She slept more peacefully. He spoke a little more. A caring gesture here, a shy laugh there. And before they realized it, they had learned to share more than tasks. They shared fear, hope, and something they didn't yet know how to name. One afternoon, she saw him laughing to himself, trying to fish with a makeshift spear. It was the first time she thought of him as someone alive, not the man from the plane, nor the stranger of the island, just a man. A man who, without noticing, was starting to become part of her. The nights grew longer not in hours, but in what they held. The wind that once frightened now blew softly, bringing the scent of the sea mingled with skin. They slept close, the body seeking the body, the cold serving as an excuse. And little by little, The touch that began as shelter became a place to stay. On a night when the moonlight drew silver on the shelter, she woke startled by distant thunder. He was beside her, arms stretched across the ground as if sleeping while guarding her space. Without thinking, she moved closer and lay on his chest. His heart beat slow, steady, sure. His hands hesitated before returning the embrace. But when they did, they seemed to find the exact place they belonged. Only the sound of the sea, the warmth growing under the blanket, their breathing becoming one. His touch rose slowly along her back, as if tracing a forgotten map. She breathed him in. At his touch, her whole body caught a shiver. He felt like immensity. And while she felt lost, she also felt found. As if he were her natural habitat for a moment, she felt part of him and he of her. Her face found his, and the kiss came hurried, contained, full of everything fear had delayed. It was tenderness, it was encounter. In that instant, there was no island, no loneliness, no past only to bodies recognizing each other in the middle of nowhere. In seconds, the blanket was no longer needed. Warmth burned in their bodies. She thought of nothing else. She wanted him whole and near. He wondered where she had been all this time, and how he had lived without her. The night became a meeting of bodies, of love, of souls. Their racing hearts set a rhythm to the sway of hips they could no longer contain. Hands found a new cadence and path. Knew her body and she knew his. It felt like floating, as if nothing in the world could be more right than that. He didn't want to stop. She had never felt anything sweeter. He awakened in her pleasures never known before, and the sadness of being on the island no longer fit. She could live there forever. Covered by his love, by his body, and by his gentle power. From that night on, they were no longer the same. Everything seemed changed, and there was no life one far from the other. When the sun rose, they were still there, together, wrapped in the same good silence. And before the day claimed back the obligations of survival, she whispered softly, "I believe you now." He smiled. And the smile had the exact weight of a promise finally kept, a smile that stole her whole world. He pulled her close again and kissed her neck, breathed in her hair and there once more. Love happened. They could no longer keep their hands off each other. And so the next days passed. There wasn't much to do on the island, and they found their way to joy. And when he tired, she reached for him again. The weeks began to have names. Not by days, there were none there, but by the small signs the island left on body and soul. The mango ripening in the high branches, the fish returning to the shallow tide, clouds announcing late afternoon rain. In her body, other signs. A light dizziness on standing, a weariness that felt larger than hunger, a queasiness that came with the smell of fish, once so welcome. And, very subtly, a new curve. Her belly began to show first, a thin crescent moon. She tried to hide it. Not for fear of him, but fear of the world, the new world that suddenly fit inside her. Suspicion had become certainty, and in her heart a deep hollow opened to fear and uncertainty. She counted the notches he carved into a piece of wood so they wouldn't lose track of time. The marks said a lot, the body's silence, even more. On a morning when the sea looked like a sheet of blue glass, she let the leaf net slide through her fingers and sat in the sand. He sensed something in her was breathing differently. He didn't ask. He sat beside her, offering presence. She drew a deep breath, like someone learning a new word for the first time. I think. There is life here. She laid a hand on her belly. The waves seemed to listen, took a moment to understand what that sentence meant, not for lack of intelligence, but because hope is a language pain, takes time to translate. Life, he repeated, as one confirms a blessing. She nodded, eyes full of water that didn't come from the sea. He didn't embrace her on impulse. First he breathed. Then he reached out and touched her hand gently, as if the whole island might crack at the slightest move. "Then there are three of us," he said, in the hush of someone making a vow. From then on, her belly grew in the pace of tides. Each week a little fuller, a new moon turning crescent. From that day, everything shifted its axis. Fish he caught, he cleaned better now, no bones, no scraps. Water from the waterfall, he filtered twice fine sand, cloth, patience. The shelter gained another wall, another care, another quiet. He watched the sun at fixed hours, as if the star owed him the favor of announcing each change. She walked less, sat more, listened to her body the way one listens to the sea inside a shell. The belly, once discreet, now rounded. By day's end, it stretched the skin as if to say, "I'm on my way." At night, with the sound of leaves, he rested his head on her belly, and even hearing nothing, spoke softly to the one with no name yet. He spoke of stars which teach direction, spoke of rain which teaches how to wait. He spoke of Hearth, a woman who turned the crash into a path and the island into a home. Sometimes he swore he felt a gentle nudge from within. She smiled. That was him, and the round belly rolled like a mild tide. The first scare came on a heavy, hot afternoon. Her world spun, legs faltered, heart raced more than it should. He steadied her before she fell, carried her to shade, cooled her forehead with a damp cloth, raised her legs, offered small sips of water. There were no medicines, no diagnoses. There was care. The dizziness passed slowly, like the body returning to its place. He didn't say it will be okay because promises there had weight. He said, "I'm here," and he stayed. At night he lit a smaller fire, cooked the sweetest fruit, held fear at bay with simple gestures. She slept with her hand over his, stayed up learning, in silence, the art of protecting. At dawn, her belly felt a little heavier. She rose differently, and he learned to offer his arm without a word. At a low-tide morning, the ocean returned a polished piece of fuselage aluminum, shining like a beacon in the sun. He lifted the metal and understood. With it, he could signal, so. With large shells, a fire fed with green leaves to raise thick smoke, mirror to throw sunlight a long distance. She smiled. Not for finally thinking of rescue, but because he was a light again now for the two of them and the one to come. While he tested reflections, she smoothed her now evident belly, the skin taut like a sail in the wind. It came at dawn, with low wind and the sea in hush. Contractions began like short waves. He warmed water, sterilized a smooth aluminum blade in the fire, prepared clean cloths. She breathed in the rhythm they had learned together, in through the nose, out through the mouth, squeezed his hand when the pain rose like tide. Hours stretched, and the shelter became the world. When the cry finally split the dark, they cried, to relief, wonder, love. He wrapped the baby in the soft leaf mat, cut the cord with the heated metal, and laid the little one on her chest. The sun rose slowly, as if it didn't want to interrupt. There, on the nameless island, a name was born with them. 2 days after the birth, the sky brought a distant helicopter. This time, the mirror made the sun shout. Smoke rose firm, straight, stubborn. The helicopter seemed to slow, and their hearts sped. He ran to the open beach, spread his arms, pointed to the ground. She stayed a bit behind, seated the baby at her chest, eyes on the line where sea and sky meet. The helicopter circled once, again, and then, as if the world had decided to return what it took, it drew near. Wind unraveled her hair into a whirl. Sand rose, the leaf mat fluttered, the brand-new cradle earned fresh dust like an old blessing. When the side door opened, he looked at her not to ask, but to make sure. She nodded. They boarded together. In the cabin, the noise belonged to another life. Her hands, dirty and steady, remained joined. They asked for water, asked dates, checked signs. No one there knew that between crash and rescue, something greater had been born. A love that learned to be a home before it became a story. When the island turned small in the window, he held her. And amid metallic sounds and lights, the baby drew a deep breath in her arms. And she felt within herself that she was the happiest woman in the world. She smiled. Later, in a room too white, someone asked for the name. They looked at each other, remembering the sand etched with names, the words the sea took, the silence the wind kept. They chose one. Not for fashion, for memory. And before falling asleep, she thought, lost on an island, we were found by something stronger than fear. Not by a boat, nor a helicopter, but by a life that chose to arrive when the world seemed to have ended. Some rescues come from outside, it's the ones that last come from within.